everyone. Welcome to From Skin to Soul, episode number 8. And today's special guest is Barbara Roberts. She's a face reading expert. And let's welcome Barbara. Yeah, so she's just a background in clinical research, and she's a co-winner of the Ewing Medical Award at UCSD. And she graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and she's magna cum laude from Case Western Reserve in social psychology. Barbara has appeared as a guest on 75 national radio shows, including Hallmark's Home and Family and Tyra Banks' show, NBC News, The Learning Channel, Inside San Diego, and her YouTube channel has 1 million views. In her 35 years developing her face reading system, she has read 10,000 people's faces, doing 500 classes for U.S. Navy, Fortune 500, Jenny Craig, YMCA, UCSD Diversity Conference, and Wells Fargo. She has read the faces of Oprah staff, and on Amazon.com, Barbara's book, Face Reading, How to Know Anyone at a Glance, and that has 225 5-star ratings. Her book is the only one to honor people of all ethnic groups. And she's the only author on this topic to have a background in medicine. So let's welcome Barbara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So I'll let you take over now.
Okay. Well, when people are in healing or entrepreneurs, are even just working on themselves, doing introspection, face reading is really key. So it's a 2,000-year-old science, and face reading is the science of looking at people and reading their facial features. So I started this about 35 years ago, have, as you said, looked at about 10,000 people. And what I do is identify facial features with psychological meanings, and that's what's covered in my book, basically. And why would this be important for your viewers? Part of it is that we're used to looking at people, but we don't really see them. And face reading is the science of being able to read someone at a glance. So basically, if you have a client, you have this much information to give them. And if you can see the kind of temperament they have, the kind of person they are, you can take the information you have and guide it into how they're going to understand it, what's the best way to reach them more quickly. And for example, if someone has a really high forehead and they're theory, they're pragmatic, they're very cerebral oriented, you don't necessarily start talking to them about the emotional feelings that they're going to have related to this topic. You start with, well, here's how it works, here are the facts, here's the scientific background. So you start with where the person is as you read their face. So to start with, there are 3 parts of the face. This is the highest part between the forehead and the eyebrows is the intellect. So the larger that is, the more important, like past President Obama, very high intellect. The emotional area is here, and that's the wonderful part that you have. And then this is the will center. Like Cindy Crawford has a very large will center. Jay Leno is an example. So we gear what information you have as a professional to who they are. So those are just a few guidelines. What I'm going to do today is look at facial features for business. Basically, face reading could be your intuitive edge in business. And we're going to do a little bit also of compatibility, which is you're the person delivering the information, therapist, clinician, whatever your background. And compatibility means how do they see you? And what can you get? How can you work with them the best? Because everyone's completely different. So to start with, I'm going to do what are called right and left sides, because you can do this not only for business. For example, if you're going to go meet with someone and they are on Google Images, if they're a CEO or they're featured on Google Images, you can pull up their face and analyze it before you go. So you have an idea of how to work with them. This came up years ago when I was doing consulting in Atlanta. And the company I worked for had 1,000 employees. They hired me to look at the man. They did a medical intervention technique for GI. So the owner wanted me to look at the face of a man he was going to pitch the company. So the man, I'll call him Jerry, who is going to go see, had 200 hospitals. So it was really important that they get the contract. So the owner said to me, well, what I want to talk to him about, well, I'll start with who I am as a person and what he's like as a person. And, we'll get to know each other and then I'll tell him about our company. I said to him, no, actually, Jerry, who's the man who owns the hospitals, has a triangle face with a lot of angularity, which means you have 10 seconds to deliver your message. So you want it to be factual. You want it to be about the pharmacy, bringing in new revenue related to using your product, more surgical cases. You want to keep it very factual, to the point, you're done. And so he called me later from the interview and he said, if I had done what I thought I should be doing myself, there no contract. He said, we got a $3 million contract based on what you told me to do. He loved it and we took it, and the interview was over in 5 minutes. So if you can look at the other person's face, this will really help you if you're going to be doing interviewing or cold calling or whatever related to someone who's well known. So the first part we're going to do is the right and the left sides of the face. So to start with, the right and the left sides, and this is all in my book, the right side, which is, as I look at Cheryl, it's opposite. That's near her plant because it turns in the back, the optic nerve turns. So this is the right side, which is your work life. So it's everything that's happened to you growing up. It's also how people see you in the community. The left side is completely different. That's the one for her that's near your picture. And this one is your personal life. It's the one how you will relate to your kids, your husband. It's what goes on inside you. And one TV show, I was on morning news about Clinton when he was inaugurated. And they wanted, at the time, we all wanted him to be a Kennedy, very dynamic. And actually, I divided his face in half. The right side of his face, which was how he will be with the public, was actually rather manipulative and kind of like I've got this wired, a little arrogant. The left side was completely different. And the left side wasn't necessarily honest. And what I said for Clinton at his inauguration, and you can imagine at the TV station, they're like, get her off, kind of like, so I said about him that at some point, he would be a soft president, not a dynamic president like Kennedy, but a good president. But at some point during his presidency, he would try to manipulate the American public. The whole country would turn on him and he wouldn't like it. Enter Monica Lewinsky. So that showed in his face 7 or 8 years before she did, before she entered and he did this behavior. Okay, so the 3 sides of the face. They're only a few options. One is they look the same. The right and the left are exactly the same. And this is Julia Roberts, I'm going to show you in a second. And basically what that means is what you see is what you get. This is who I am. I'm the same with my family as I am in work. And actually, I'll show you her face right now. So this is Julia Roberts, an example of when the 2 sides of the face are exactly the same. So the right side is exactly the same as the left side. Now, the next example is the one where the right side looks really good and the left side looks really distressed or under a lot of, well, you'll see. Basically, what you're looking at are the feelings in the face. So I'm going to show you Abraham Lincoln, and to get a better view of this, you can go on Google Images. So we're going to look at his face. I divided it right and left side, and I'm going to cover his face so that you can see the technique I'm using. The first part we're looking at is the right side of his face, and this, of course, is at the end of the Civil War. And you can see the level, of course, of distress of the war and people dying, and obviously, but the left side is even more distressed. The left side is the loss of his son. It almost looks like he's lost. So I'm just going to show you that again. We look for the feelings in this. This is dynamic. I'm getting us through the Civil War. The left side is his personal life, and this is completely different. Can you see the difference?
Yes.
It's very, very disturbed and completely understandable. Okay, another example.
Time difference.
Sorry?
an Abraham Lincoln? Are you saying like the right side is the first half of his life and the second half of his life?
No. I didn't say that at all. What I
Oh,
said, the right side of his face is his work life. This is his presidency, what's going on, his administration. The left side is his personal life. So his personal life has nothing to do with age. Personal life is the loss of his son, his wife, we know, was very depressed, a very difficult presidency. So that's what I was referring to. Here's an example of a child, and basically this is the right and the left side are very similar. Now, when we're going to do business, but when people are dating, what you do on the internet is you pull up the sides of the face, and you can see, is this person who they say they are? And so that's really important. One example, I'm looking for another photo. Ronald Reagan, if you go on Google Images, the photo is actually the right side of his face, again, looks very dynamic, very good in the presidency. The left side looks very fearful, a little lost. So they're not always the same. That's the key. I'm going to see if I can find one more quickly. The last type, so we've got two sides look the same. What you see is what you get. Right side looks good, left side doesn't look very good, and that means the person is in psychological denial. Who they say they are isn't really who they are. And then the last part, which actually shows in my face, is when someone, when the right side looks kind of worn, which is often people who work in trauma and medicine like I have, the right side, we've just seen a lot of suffering. The hope is the left side looks really good. So I'll show you my face, and I wasn't prepared to do this, but I'll just show you what it looks like. So the best alternatives are when they're the same, what you see is what you get, or when the left side looks good, because this is who you really are. The left side is who we are personally, the right side is what's happened to us. So this is, I don't know if we can see it well, the right side of my face is a little drawn. The left side looks better. So the left side is our inner transformation, our spirituality, what we've become from what we've seen. Now, something else I wanted to go into related to business is when we're looking at people, there's certain facial features that we can see right away, and that will tell us about their character. And so basically, I'm going to show you a few and tell you their psychological meanings. So if you're looking at someone on your team, if you're a business person or a manager, you can place the person into the right job based on their face. If someone's very much of an introvert, we don't want them in the PR department necessarily, whereas we want someone's gifts to match what they do. And one person who wrote in to you mentioned that we could do careers. And so I have a whole other class on that, and that's featured in my book. So I want to cover that for 30 seconds as an example. There are 4 main careers, and I'm just going to outline. I'm going to get my book out. And by the way, this is on Amazon, as Cheryl said. Today, for people who are tuning in, if you're interested in getting the face chart that I wrote, if you write me face reading 1 at AOL.com, I'll send you a free copy of my face chart. And it has at least 100 facial features with all their psychological meanings. So basically, I'm going to go through a little of career before we go back to business, because someone asked for that who wrote in. The first type of job is an analytical job or a technical job. And often people who do analytical work have the face I do. They have often a narrow nose bridge. Their eyes are small. Small eyes means very focused on detail. People who have close-set eyes, which is also mine. This is precision, good with research projects. A very tall forehead, as an example, or a wide forehead like Martin Luther King. And keep in mind, this goes through all the different ethnic backgrounds. So a very tall, wide forehead is thinker, planner, strategist. And also, sometimes someone has high eyebrows who is also in computer technical work. It means high standards, not easily impressed by other people, focus. So that those are some of the qualities one would have if you're happy in a job that would be computer, technical, mechanical jobs, and analytical job. On the other hand, a communication job is completely different on the facial features. And by the way, on YouTube, I have about 1 million people watching, and I have 4 shows on how to choose your job, if that helps. Okay, in the communication area, for example, you could be a teacher, minister, counselor, writer. And facial features that you would have, Cheryl has them all, actually, almost. One is the rounded forehead line, which is people, 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 really good with the public. Yeah, very nice, beautiful. Large ears also indicates listening well, tuning into the big picture. There's one you don't have, but this is featured, especially when I go on TV, people have a ball on the tip of their nose. And what this means is center of news information, and people tell you everything. So these are really good for ministers, counselors. Oftentimes different eye colors go with different jobs, and hazel eyes goes with, in a Caucasian, goes with healing and insight jobs. So people with hazel eyes are really drawn to that topic. Now keep in mind the face for everyone is completely unique. These are different facial features, and in each face you might have 20 of these. But these are the patterns of personality that go with the facial features. Another example for someone who is in communication would be a very wide mouth, which means the person is generous and affectionate. And high-placed ears, also, we draw a horizontal line across the eyes. High-placed ears indicates the person has multiple college degrees, which you might need to be a counselor, as an example. Past President Obama had very high-placed ears. Another type of job would be a design, musical, or artistic job. And when I was in San Diego, where I live, I was doing a class for 100 people in the Interior Design Center, and 90 of them had this ear, and the ear is actually very thin. It's very long and thin, and this is literally the ear for interior design. So every time I see this ear, and I do individual sessions as if people are interested who are tuning in, every time I look at this ear, I ask the person if they do interior design, and they always nod and say yes. So these are guidelines. Also for artistic jobs, the widow's peak, this is a widow's peak, means very creative. We think outside the box. So very good for artistic design, music jobs. When the ears come forward, that is sensitive more to sound and music, and often musicians have that as one of their main facial features. And if people have very, very fine hair, this means super sensitive to sound and vibration. So particularly good in the arts. One of the last job types, quickly here, is physical jobs, outdoor jobs, which might include policeman, fireman, personal trainer, gardener, where the person works more athletically. And so features that are very positive for those jobs, actually Hemingway had these features, the author Hemingway, would be thick hair, which indicates physical resilience, a very strong eye color, and this would be in people who are Caucasian. In my book, what I cover is, let's say, if someone is Oriental or Hispanic or African American, we would assume that their eye color would be brown with dark hair. So when I refer to physical jobs, the strong eye color obviously would be hazel, dark blue, brown in someone who's Caucasian. Also someone who does physical jobs, if they have very thick eyebrows and a very strong mark here, those are the 2 marks we talk about in medicine that have to do with strong physical endurance. And then, of course, the huge jaw is really helpful for working with your body because this is dynamic willpower. So those are some examples of jobs and how you can know if you're in the job that's the best for you. And one thing I talk about is there's a job that you were born to do, and it's literally in your face. So in individual sessions, I told Cheryl that for anyone tuning in, I'm happy to give you a 30% discount on getting an individual face reading session with me. So just write me facereading1@aol.com. Tell me you're interested and I'll send you the information. And if it's okay, do we have enough time for me to cover a little more?
Oh, sure.
Okay, because I have lots more. Okay, so now what we're going to do is talk about a few of the facial features that you'll see in your boss, you'll see in other team members, or if you do interviewing, this is huge to have this skill. And of course, if you're a healer or a therapist, this is it's another assessment tool other than your own skill as a therapist or your own work. So one example is a square forehead line. And this one is the example of someone who works really long hours. They tend to be a little more workaholic. So when we're doing compatibility related to marriage, this comes up in the spouse where they go, I never see my husband because he or she, or my wife, they're working long hours. So this is where we talk about compromise, compatibility. The next one that Cheryl has is the round. And this again is long-term friendships, but also people, really good with the public. When the forehead is very high to the eyes, so this is the distance between the eyebrows. This is, again, strategy focused, an ideas person, thinks in big terms, they're always thinking. And the other example, when the forehead is very short, this is someone who is more street smart, visceral, and sometimes, because every facial feature has both gifts and things to learn, this one means that they sometimes do not have good discrimination because they're very impulsive and they just act. So another very interesting example, if you work in management or you're a woman in management, this particular feature is the one, the wispiness. This is the one Cheryl has. This means big mother's influence. And people have that who are all different ethnic backgrounds. I see this a lot. And so the way to know, let's say you're a woman boss. So you're looking and the person who you're talking to, your employee has this feature, meaning that possibly, to some degree, you're a mother figure to that person. The way to know, is it going to be really good or not as good, is you look at the lips. This is like more advanced. If the lips, the top of the lips is round, so it comes round, Cheryl has that, it means mother's influence is good. If, on the other hand, the lips are on the upper lip is flat or kind of a joker mouth, like it presses down, this, people tell me, means that sometimes the mother was more of a disciplinarian, too strict, or they weren't close to her. So the influence was big, but it wasn't positive. So this would be something to know if you're a woman in management and you work with women, if they have that feature. Another example that we talked about is the widow's peak. So the person really thinks outside the box. And so this is important when you're setting up projects and you want to assign different projects. Basically, in management or working with people, you want to assess who they are, what is their temperament, and then you can more quickly reach them. Some other examples, the very low set eyebrows is someone who's very friendly, easy to get to know, whereas someone who has the higher eyebrows, this is high standards and a little more formal. This would be the person if they're a client, you refer to them by their last name. And then they go, oh, call me Mary. But let them tell you, let them pull you in versus you call them Mary and they'll go, I'm Mrs. Burns, thank you. So now, also, if you're working with a boss who has very thick eyebrows, they're going to want something now, 100%. So they're very intense about what they will and won't do. Whereas someone like who has very fine eyebrows is going to be very sensitive. And if you're a therapist and this is your client, they're very gentle, they're sensitive. So you just need to say it once and they'll pick it up. Okay, now this is the eyebrow that Cheryl and I have, and this is the rounded one, which is love of harmony at home. So this is a very nice eyebrow. Cheryl has a little bit of this to her eyebrow too, and this is fashion texture color on her eyebrow near the painting. This is a little bit of an arch in the eyebrow. And what I'd like to do as a segue perhaps into another class, we might want to do one on romance and how to know if he or she is the person for you. Here are some examples from the lips. So the lips will show someone's intimacy style. So other than going on Match.com and looking at the right and the left side, the lips will show how much they're willing to give and receive in intimate relationships. So ellipse, this would be Julia Roberts, very wide mouth. And this would indicate generous and affectionate. So very, very positive. This particular mouth, when the lips are very thin, this is often someone who doesn't share their feelings very easily. They might do things for you in projects, but they might have a hard time telling you how they feel. I think there's that book called The Four Styles of Love that goes into some people are more verbal, some are more action. So this would definitely be an action person. A lip structure that you want to be a little careful with, which is very unusual, is the one that is right under the nose. Only probably 10% of people have this. And this was found in Henry VIII. As we know, Henry VIII killed 4 wives. So this particular mouth, so you want to, if you see this, you want to just call me or find out. This particular lip is dangerous to cross swords with. And when I teach criminology, which is in the back of my book, I go through features to avoid if you're dating, pictures of features, 10 pictures of facial features that might be complicated. And the last of the lip structures is the one that Cheryl and I have. This is found in 85% of people, which is upper lip is narrow, lower lip is full. And this means we take in information and we don't gossip. So those are a few thoughts for relationships. And we can do a little more. How are you feeling, Cheryl? Should I do more? What do you think?
Very good. It's so fascinating.
Thank you.
For all the single ladies out there, before you go, send Barbara, call Barbara, see if you're compatible. Our faces are like a blueprint.
May I tell a story from? Is that okay? And you tell me when you're done, and I'll stop. But here's a story. I was looking at this woman in Poland about a month ago. And she showed me this man. She said, "Oh, I'm really in love with him. We're just." And so I said, "Well, let me look at him." So what I do when I do compatibility is I look at you, if you're a woman, look at your face, what it is you need in someone. Everyone needs different things. Sometimes people need better communication. Some people are more interested in the physical aspect of a relate. Everyone's different in relationships. So anyways, I was looking at her face in detail. And then, so she showed me his face. So I looked at this man, and the first thing I said to her was, it's interesting. He looks like he used to be in the mafia. And there's 6 parts around the eyes. And some of them, for him, looked a little bit on the dangerous side. And she said, well, actually, he used to be in the mafia. And I'm like, oh, no. And then, so I looked at him again, and I went, did he used to be a drug dealer? There are parts of the eyes, that 10 parts, and you're like looking at radiance, you're looking at soul age, all these things that I look at. And she went, well, actually, he used to be a drug dealer. And I said to her, I think you need to choose someone else. I don't think this is your best person. Because in her face, there is this tremendous heart feeling in the sense of wanting to heal people and work with people. But sometimes people are not open to that. And so in compatibility, we look at, is this the best person for you? Not for somebody else, but for you, is this your best person? So again, if people are interested, I'm happy to work with people individually in a session. And it is $100 for the hour instead of $140. So just go ahead and call me Face Reading 1 at AOL.com, or I should say, write to me. And if you want the free face chart, let me know and I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I'll also post your link, your website.
Okay. Thank you.
The comments below. Yeah, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for having me back. And sorry about the technical parts, but thank you.